Rush Limbaugh, once again, we heard him earlier, but here's another Limbaugh soundbite synthesizing all that Ted Kennedy was.
It just breaks my heart, folks. I tell you, to sit here and watch this, to watch the purposeful destruction of the free enterprise system, to watch the purposeful destruction of American capitalism. That's what we're watching right before our very eyes. And we're lionizing a guy who had a fundamental role in it all of his legislative career, and that's Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy screwed up everything he touched.
Senator Kennedy screwed up everything he touched. The willful undermining of capitalism. Who do these people think they are? Ted Kennedy, I know, socialist. That's right, socialist. John Kennedy, socialist. Bobby Kennedy, socialist. Obviously, everybody knows they're socialists. Oh, and of course, conservatives who were talking about politicizing his death, as we talked to, talking about Democrats politicizing his death. We talked to Carl Frisch last hour from MediaMatters.org, and they're condemning Democrats for doing this. And of course, as I recall, it's conceivably possible that Republicans may have done that when, I don't know, Ronald Reagan died 4 years ago. So let's see who this quote is from. Oh, it's from, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Who did we just play the quote from there, JR?
Your boy Limbaugh?
Yeah, Rush Limbaugh. That's right. So here's what Rush Limbaugh said 4 years before accusing Democrats of using Kennedy's death as a, quote, sympathy ploy to advance a health care bill. Limbaugh drew direct lines between Reagan's legacy fighting communism and the need for further U.S. engagement in the war in Iraq. Again, the guy we're all listening to wanted to further the war in Iraq in 2005. Okay. Back then, the conservative radio host said, following Reagan's death on June 5, 2004, the Strategic Defense Initiative was regarded much as the whole war in Iraq is today. SDI was treated as such a joke. SDI was dangerous. SDI was going to blow up the world. SDI was impossible. It was typical liberalism. Greatness couldn't be done. Greatness can't happen, because that's what we liberals think, is that greatness can't be done and greatness can't happen. Reagan was right, just as George W. Bush is today, and I really believe that if Reagan had been able to, he would have put his hand on Bush's shoulder and say to him, stay the course, George. I really believe that. No one wants, that's Limbaugh. So mentioning the Strategic Defense Initiative, which is the most expensive, wasteful boondoggle that liberals would dream of wasting that much money on something, as has been wasted on the Strategic Defense Initiative. So he used Reagan's, and also Limbaugh acted like it was done. Like, yeah, we figured that out. Whew. Following Reagan's death, not in 2005, 2004, I apologize. So he was praising the Iraq war there in 2004, thought we should, expand it. But also, so he's using Reagan's death to expand the Iraq war and to continue to make the case for SDI. But using someone's death for political purposes, that's wrong. Here, I'm going to be totally clear on this. When a politician dies, you can exploit their death for political purposes because they were politicians. And here's what wouldn't bother them, that. Here's what you can't do. Use their death to advance your own cause if they were in opposition to that cause. You can't have Martin Luther King die and then say, you can't use Martin Luther King's death as a rallying cry for segregation. An extreme example, but nonetheless, I think you get my point. Bill Kristol, he would never, from the Weekly Standard, he would never, he's the smart conservative. Weekly Standard at the time, Bill Kristol, he would never exploit Reagan's death for political purposes. Now, in Bill Kristol's defense, I have not read anything of him accusing Democrats of exploiting Ted Kennedy's death for their own political purposes. But nonetheless, here's what Bill Kristol said on a July 13th, 2004 appearances on the show that he appears on, Fox News Sunday. No one wants to politicize the death of a recent president, says Bill Kristol. Of course not. But you know what? The Bush campaign should. In my view, they should go out with an ad next week, a very respectful ad about Ronald Reagan, and say, we have a disagreement. George W. Bush is a Reaganite. John Kerry thought the Reagan presidency was a period of moral darkness. So, again, Bill Kristol saying it, the hypocrisy continues. Again, not Kristol in particular, because I haven't read anything that he has yet said about Ted Kennedy. Crystal, though, I'm reading here from the Huffington Post. This is from, Huffington Post story written today. Crystal wasn't alone in his inclination toward political opportunism. A whole host of GOP officials pushed to frame Bush as a Reagan disciple following Reagan's 2004 death. They wanted to portray George Bush as a tax-cutting, war-fighting conservative firebrand that would contrast with, of course, John Kerry, who we all know was an effete liberal who never did anything and wouldn't know war in any circumstance, wouldn't know, oh, wait a minute, that's right, he got some Purple Hearts, he fought in Vietnam, and the other guy fought in Alabama. Anyway, not important, who cares? Just a little reminder of the decision that we made in 2004. Americans are going to be focused on President Reagan for the next week, said then RNC Chair Ed Gillespie. The parallels between him and Bush are there. I don't know how you miss them. I'm pretty sure Ed Gillespie is missing them now. Now Ed Gillespie be like, Bush? Reagan? What are you talking about? Wait, which one was Bush? I don't recall. I never said that. Don't be saying Bush and Reagan. Reagan was awesome. Bush, I don't even remember. He was president for like an hour. That was a good time. Oh, my God. Charles Krauthammer, another conservative columnist, writes a column for the Krauthammer writes for the Washington Post. He writes, Reagan was a large man with large ideas. He slipped a lot of times. He had his difficulties, but in the end, he was vindicated by history, if you get the big ideas right. And I think there's a lot of application to President Bush, who was also interested in big ideas in the war on terror, the war in Iraq, changing the economy, all this. These guys are so full of crap, it is hard to imagine that they can actually write and say the things they do. Again, here's more of the nonsense war on terror, which is like a war on fighting in a bunker. It's a tactic. As we learned today from none other than that clown talking to Wally Herger, congressman from the 2nd District, who talks about, what was his line, though, that he's a proud right-wing terrorist. And Wally Herger's like, yeah, I love you. It's awesome, you're a terrorist. Oh, that's right, we don't like terrorists. I forget. I can't remember what era it is, what year it is, what month it is, and when I'm allowed to say what and what I'm allowed to condemn Democrats for, but I can say myself with complete impunity. It's exhausting. I tell you, it's exhausting.